For many people, the whole idea of God is completely absurd, irrational, makes no sense to them. And yet the underlying assumption is that somehow God should make sense to us mortals. But if God existed, would that really be the case? Stay tuned and find out. Hey everyone, this is Mark Leeming from Segue to Reason, the place where you can learn right now things that have often taken me years to figure out myself. Now, as science is exploring the depths of our universe more and more, the more mysterious our universe is actually becoming. That's because our universe often operates in ways that are counterintuitive, that defy our human logic. That's why the late great Richard Feynman said of quantum theory that anyone who claims to understand it obviously doesn't. And when you look at the history of science, many of the major scientific discoveries have usually appeared as counterintuitive at first, as bizarre, irrational, going against our common sense and against our common perception of the world around us. For example, throughout most of human history, people thought that the Earth was flat, and for good reason. Does the Earth look round to you? Now, if this is true of the natural world around us, then how much more its creator? Why do we mortals, in our finitude, seem to think that we should be able to wrap our heads around the whole idea of God? I mean, if many things in our universe are counterintuitive, wouldn't God seem like that to us as well? Now, obviously, I grew up before the iPad and the Xbox, and so like most kids my age, I had to create my own fun, which makes me sort of happy that my kids do have an Xbox and an iPad, because I used to do some pretty crazy stuff growing up on the farm. For example, my cousin and I would sometimes like to fire arrows straight up overhead and then run like crazy, because of course, all things being equal, the arrow should fall right back down from where it was fired from. And what's interesting is that the ancient Greeks used the illustration of firing an arrow straight up to disprove the radical notion that the Earth rotates on its axis and moves around the sun. Excuse me. Now, their reasoning wasn't as crazy as it may sound to us today, because by this time the Greeks had a rough estimate of how big the Earth was. So in order for the Earth to rotate on its axis in 24 hours, that would mean the ground beneath their feet would have to be traveling at hundreds of miles an hour in that direction. So why was it, when an archer fired an arrow, that by the time the arrow came back down, the archer wasn't way over there somewhere? Or for that matter, why don't the clouds or the birds fly overhead at hundreds of miles an hour? You see, there was nothing wrong with their argumentation. It was perfectly logical, it was perfectly rational, it was sound. It's just that it was based upon a faulty and limited understanding of how the world actually works. And I see this as a cautionary tale against rejecting the belief in God. As a former atheist, I know that there are some really good sounding arguments against God's existence. And yet, do they only really appear rational and logical to us because of the limits of our understanding as mere mortals? I mean, the Trinity certainly seems irrational. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, 3 in 1 and 1 in 3. Or take the deity of Christ, that while on this earth Jesus was 100% human, but at the same time 100% God. Now, if there are many things about our universe that seem counterintuitive to us, that make absolutely no sense, yet nevertheless we accept those things to be true, then shouldn't we be open to the possibility that if there is a God, there would be many things about him that simply wouldn't make sense and would seem completely irrational to us? Keep searching. Oh, watch out! Okay, you girls, you better just go.